The pitch of a difficult economy, and the state government certainly is no exception to that rule. 2 weeks ago, Governor Strickland ordered $540 million in state budget cuts. That order included the elimination of more than 2,500 jobs. The cuts were ordered 8 months after an initial reduction in state spending of $733 million. So that's in a period of approximately 2 years, or excuse me, 1 year, 2 rounds of cuts. These are tough times for everyone, but especially the hard-working men and women whose jobs will fall victim to the latest round of cuts. I think it's time for state government to take a serious look at where it's spending yours and my hard-earned tax dollars. We're here today to talk a little bit about how my opponent in the race for Attorney General is spending our tax dollars in the state treasurer's office. With roughly 150 employees, the state treasurer's office is the smallest office in state government. The office spends approximately $8.8 million each year on staff salary. And roughly 20% of my opponent's staff and his office's operating budget go towards public relations efforts of that office. Now, what exactly does that mean? Well, according to the records that we've obtained from my opponent's office, 31 state employees in the building behind me, right here, State Office Towers, are dedicated to promoting my opponent's name. 10 are designated as community education employees, 13 are designated as community outreach employees, and 8 are designated as public affairs employees. Now, if my math is correct, that's 31 employees and $1.8 million in tax dollars each year to aggressively promote Richard Cordray's name as he runs for Attorney General. In my humble estimation, this is a colossal waste of taxpayer dollars from someone who claims to be the guardian of the public treasury. Now, before you suggest otherwise, I'm not suggesting that elected officials shouldn't communicate with the press or the public. To the contrary. They have an obligation to communicate with the public about important issues and the services of their office. But an analysis of the office's more than 200 press releases suggests that few are little more than a slew of press releases publicizing the everyday work of the treasurer's office and promoting my opponent's name at a time when public polls show he is unknown to most of Ohioans. I'd like to have you take a look at the graph on the easel right here. We did a little digging to see what else we could buy with Mr. Cordray's public relations budget. As you can see from the graph right here, and I think there should also be one in the packet that Jennifer provided to each of you, $1.8 million will buy the following: 83 Toyota Prius hybrids, or tuition for 214 students at a 4-year institution. It would buy a public education for 320 students according to the state's per pupil funding amount, or it would provide Medicaid coverage for more than 2,000 Ohio children. Now, I'm not sure about you, but that makes getting your name out there seem a little less important. I don't argue again that providing valuable public information to Ohioans is the proper use of tax dollars, but not when it's nearly 20% of the office's operating budget. In fact, his decision to devote such a large percentage of his budget to public relations demonstrates a lack of concern for taxpayer dollars at a time when agencies across this state are enduring yet another round of budget cuts. Mr. Cordray is elected and applies the same lavish PR philosophy to the Attorney General's office, then I suppose we can expect to see approximately 300 state employees and more than $10 million dedicated to public relations in that office. I find it very ironic that at the same time that my opponent is advising Ohioans to carefully budget their own money, he's acting so recklessly with the tax dollars that have been entrusted to him. Again, I want to thank you very much for coming to the press conference this morning, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Mike, do you know whether those numbers have changed since Rich Cordray came to office, or whether they're similar to his predecessor?
You know, that's a really good question, and I don't know as I stand here, we can get that information for you, whether that's changed. I will tell you that whether it's Rich Cordray or his predecessor, 20% of your budget for public relations and outreach is far too much, particularly at a time like this in this state's history when economics are such that we're cutting budgets, we're laying people off.
How many
percentage?
I'm sorry?
What percentage?
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't know that I know what the percentage ought to be. I think it should be a well of a lot less than 20%. And I can tell you what, that when I was the United States Attorney, we had an office of approximately 100, which is slightly smaller, and I didn't have one PR person to handle my press releases, to handle the return of indictments and things of that nature. Now, I'm not about to suggest that it should be 0, but I'm saying that even 8 that are allocated to the role of being public relations is far too much. I represented one half of the state, over one half of the state of Ohio as Attorney General. I had none. Clearly, 1 or 2 would be sufficient.
How many of these jobs are you going to cut then?
Well, we're talking about the Attorney General's office right now. I'm going to come in and take a really hard look at what we have at this point in time.
His office has a lot of PR positions that are not in that building. They are out dealing with foreclosure in different cities throughout the state, dealing with problems with consumers and tax and treasury kind of issues. So how many of those positions would you just kill the branch offices since you only want 2?
No, we're not talking about killing, as you put it, the branch offices off. What I'm suggesting is that the number of 30 could at least be reduced, in my humble estimation, by at least 25%, maybe as much as 50%, particularly at a time like this.
Do you know how many of these are in branch offices now?
I do not know as we stand here, but I can get that information for you if you'd like to have it.